By the end of this video, you'll discover why you can't afford to ignore podcast SEO if you're trying to grow your podcast. So look, I want to just get something very, very clear. Normal SEO is very different from podcast SEO. You might have some ideas of what I'm talking about when I say podcast SEO, or maybe SEO in general, which really stands for search engine optimization. And there's a big difference between normal SEO versus podcast SEO. Podcast listeners are not going onto Google to discover new podcasts to listen to. They go to Apple and Spotify. The same way music lovers aren't going to Netflix to find new music, they're going to Spotify as well. So my point here is, don't waste your time writing blogs or thinking that that's going to help you attract listeners. It won't. You're only going to attract readers, not listeners. Now, so many people out there focus on websites, making it fancy, making it stand out, tags, links, all this malarkey. But honestly, from what we've found, having optimized websites to try to attract listeners, it never really translates ever from our own experience. So the goal of podcast SEO is simply to optimize your show to be found specifically on Apple and Spotify, to rank your show high and increase your organic exposure, to dominate the niche and rank for highly relevant keywords. Ignoring podcast SEO is honestly the best way on planet Earth to hide your podcast from listeners who are literally actively searching for your show. So don't ignore it. But if you're not convinced just yet, let me just break this down a little bit more. My name is Anthony Winery, and I'm the co-founder of GetMoreListeners.com, a company helping education-based podcasters, business owners, coaches, experts in their fields turn a slow growth podcast into a rapidly growing positive ROI show within 6 months. Over the last 4 years, we've interviewed and coached 350 plus podcasters, and I'm the co-host of Why Your Podcast Isn't Growing, which generates around $10,000 of attributed sales every single month. I am also the co-founder of the leading podcast and book brand on Amazon under the pen name Daniel Larson. Yes, Daniel Larson is a pen name in case you're familiar with these books. But look, this isn't about me, this is about you. So here are 4 more reasons why you can't afford to ignore podcast SEO as part of your growth strategy in 2021. Increased listener base and visibility. Podcast SEO allows you to directly influence your show's visibility on platforms like Apple and Spotify. A reminder, these are the primary discovery points for new audiences, for new listeners. That's where they're going to, Apple and Spotify. Podcast listeners are continually looking for new content on these platforms. Ranking higher on search results directly means you're being exposed to new listeners on, guess what? Autopilot. And this is why this works so well. Number 2, there's direct impact on your actual downloads. We've had clients like Raven go from 400 to 23,000 monthly downloads in 11 months and is now collecting $2,000 cash each month from a book that she's published because her audience that she built. Other clients like Whitney, who was struggling to grow for literally 2 years, and it wasn't until we fixed up her podcast SEO, helping her be more discovered, helping her become more visible on Apple and Spotify, again, where the listeners are, that we saw her go from 600 downloads per month to 7,000 monthly downloads in 7 months. Our client success manager at Get More Listeners at our company literally launched her own show, and she ran an experiment with no social media promotions, not single one. She didn't tell her family or friends or even her parents. No one knew about this. And without any guest appearances, literally, it's a solo show, just focused totally on organic reach and retention. And this is what happened. Now tell me that's not a sexy looking graph, right? She grew her podcast strictly, all with data-driven podcast SEO. It's pretty freaking nuts. And most people are totally sleeping on this. And that moves us to this point. First mover advantage. When you're able to leverage podcast SEO, because most people totally ignore podcast SEO. Most people don't even realize podcast SEO is a thing. Like, what? Seriously? You can actually make some changes to your show and it magically ranks higher in Apple and Spotify. Yes, you actually can. This is an actual thing we do with clients and it works so well, and you can do the exact same thing for your show. And it's not magic, it's called podcast SEO. But their ignorance right here, people who are ignoring podcast SEO, that's our advantage, right? Because it provides a unique opportunity for you to get ahead in this competitive market. So when you get started early with podcast SEO, you're basically establishing yourself and your presence early on, building your authority, ranking as high as possible for the right keywords, because right now is not common practice. Not everyone knows about this, because everyone will eventually catch up, because the strategy that we're using that's working for our clients is working for ourselves, that you're going to start using to see it work for you. And because it works, more people start using it, making it far more competitive. Right now, people are just totally unaware. And the results above prove that, right? I'll be honest with you, I'm not planning to keep this quiet, although some clients are telling me like, hey guys, Ant Tyke, which is my business partner, you guys just slow down. Maybe didn't tell everyone about it. But we're not going to keep quiet, because this is such an effective way to grow shows. We know that you can grow your show if you just apply podcast SEO. Then the third thing is we have high intent audience engagement. So what do I mean? When someone types in how to reduce anxiety with meditation on Apple or Spotify, guess what they're looking for? They're looking for a podcast on how to reduce anxiety with meditation. There's no guesswork, right? So when you're ranked on page one, guess what happens? They'll listen. And guess what happens when they listen to a podcast they want to listen to? They engage and stick around. And when they engage and stick around, they're far more likely to actually give you money. And I'll get into that in just a moment. And just like that, without much convincing, you've turned a total stranger who never knew about your show before, who's now discovered you on Apple and Spotify, you've turned them into a highly engaged listener because you were ranked high on Apple and Spotify. You utilize SEO, which again allows you to attract the right listeners who are actively searching for your content. This is so powerful. I can't stress this enough. It's just so powerful, right? High intent listeners are far more likely to subscribe, engage, and convert into a regular follower or customer because they're a high intent listener. They're searching for your content. And think about the difference between a stranger online who finds your promotional piece online and decides to listen versus a stranger who finds you organically because they were actively searching and looking for your content. And that's why myself and my clients love podcast SEO so much. Now, the final piece when it comes to business opportunities. Now, this is one that people can easily skip. But this point builds off the last point, right? Because podcast SEO doesn't just boost your listenership, it also opens doors and avenues when it comes to monetization and business opportunity. Because people have a high intent, we've had so many clients, once we optimize their show for podcast SEO, they're now able to turn their podcast into a lead generation machine. This means they have more people show up to discovery calls or sales calls, interested in joining their program or membership. And how do they find them? Through podcast SEO. This is an email that one of our clients got from a listener who found them through, guess what? Podcast SEO. Right? So remember, listeners are searching for specific solutions to their problems. When your show appears on search, they feel like they've found exactly what they're looking for. It's really that simple. Clients like Jenna, who, again, a new potential client just found her show, is currently working for her. They booked the call for discovery because you're positioned as the solutions when you're ranked highly for the right keywords. So at this point, I hope you've been following along. We've got a pen and paper, writing these things down. And I hope you see the real opportunity here to take advantage of podcast SEO. I hope you see why I state so strongly that you can't afford, literally you'll lose money if you ignore this. Again, Sheridan, who says this process is working. I've been using SEO, social media, and she's being found organically without being salesy, without being pushy. And now you see why we're obsessed with podcast SEO and same with our clients. Look, we do literally monthly audits for our clients to optimize their shows for podcast SEO because that's important. Every single month, we're making sure they're ranked for the right keywords and then moving up the rank. That's why, again, we conduct keyword research for our clients, ensuring they're discoverable on Apple and Spotify. And that's why data-driven podcast SEO is step 3 of our 4-step growth process. This is what we use to help our clients gain thousands of new listeners, turning their show into a positive ROI asset for their business. So that's all good and stuff. I'm probably teasing you a little bit, but I'm going to give you the final piece here, which is really how you can start using podcast SEO to rank your show higher on Apple and Spotify. And it's going to be a quick fire breakdown of the key components that you need. So number 1, you need to spend most of your time optimizing the foundations when it comes to your show name, episode titles, descriptions, topics, and guests. Think about which keyword you're going for. So ask yourself, what search terms, what keywords will my listeners search in to find my type of podcast? If it's business, get more specific. Online business. If it's not just online business, get more specific about the model, how to make money with your podcast, or drop shipping, or how to grow an agency. Whatever the search term is, add that within your show name, your episode titles, within your descriptions. Have content focused on that topic, and invite guests who can talk on that topic. That's how you start ranking for the right search term. That's how you build relevancy. What you can do, number 2, is group episodes into logical topic clusters. So what do I mean? Basically, just categorize your episodes. Once you categorize your podcast into different topics, you then want to ask yourself specifically, what keywords or what search terms will my audience type in to find these specific topics, right? And then you want to add the right search term, the right keyword. Search term, keywords are interchangeable into all of those past episodes. And of course, you don't want to just keyword stuff and add a bunch of, it needs to still make sense, but you want to add as many keywords as you can to all of your previous episodes. And this is something that most people completely ignore. Number 3, the secret to growing podcasts is hidden in plain sight. So you want to analyze previous results, past data, and reverse engineer what's working, right? So if you already have existing podcast episodes, which I'm assuming you do, hence why you're watching this, you want to focus first on quick wins. So You want to create essentially, if you find episodes where they're super popular or topics that are super popular, you want to create spin-off episodes. You want to maybe have a recap if it was a guest. You want to explore different angles of the same topic because you know that's highly searched. If you look at past episodes or like an episode that just exploded in popularity, that's not by accident because people are finding it organically on Apple and Spotify. That's how they're finding it. So you know that topic's trending, it's hot. So cover it. Again, recaps, different angles, explore popular topics within your show. These episodes should target your ideal listeners. This needs to be targeted. I'm not just trying to just expose it to everyone. No, you want to be found by the right listeners. So focus on these niche topics, then expand to topics that will appeal over time to a broader audience. So you want to start with specific topics. You want to build niche fame based on the keywords you want to rank for. And then you want to broaden which topics you want to cover over time, but you want to just focus on a specific keyword you want to rank for first. So the best place to get niche topics will come from your listeners by understanding their pain points and their interests. You've probably heard this 1,000 times, but it's so important. You don't want to just guess. You want to just understand, again, your audience on a deep level, understand their pain points and their interests, and that is what you should cover. So then what you want to do is cover these topics in your niche to build topical authority and reduce your time to grow, TTG. Your episode will attract and keep more listeners engaged because, again, you're kind of almost like pairing your podcast SEO strategy needs to be paired with your content strategy. They go kind of hand in hand because the topics you cover on the show will determine which topics and which keywords you'll have in your title. Which keywords you have in your title will determine which keywords you rank for on Apple and Spotify. Which keywords you rank for on Apple and Spotify will determine which listeners you attract. Can you see how all of this is linked in? Number 4, never miss an upload. I don't care if you're getting married, if you're pregnant, if it's Christmas, I really don't care. Never miss an upload. It's never going to be good for momentum. And the more times, because SEO, it can happen very fast, but also compounds. So yes, you can have some quick changes straight away by going into past episodes, adding the right keyword, ranking the right search terms, but it also compounds over time. So the more times you cover this keyword and this topic in your podcast, the more relevant your podcast is for that keyword. That's how Apple and Spotify can, again, rank your show. Over time, you should aim to increase your weekly output. The reason why we say increase your weekly output is really just to increase the touch point for your listeners, but also increase the number of content you have covering a specific topic, which speeds up the process of you becoming more relevant for that topic. Again, all these things are very linked. Number 5, guest on other people's podcasts. So basically, guest appearances on other people's shows is an underrated way to build your brand, but also podcast SEO. Remember, it's about ranking higher on Apple and Spotify. It's about increasing the discovery points for your show. So if you guest on multiple different people's podcasts, who have their own audiences, who have separate audiences as well to you, but they look alike, right? You're increasing the discovery points where a new listener will discover you. So if you guest on someone else's show and their listeners now find out about you because you're on that person's show, you're being more discoverable. You're being more discoverable on Apple and Spotify. So if you can imagine these as kind of like backlinks to your podcast, right? And it's making an association between your name and a specific topic. Again, that's an authority piece. And then the final thing, the more niche content you produce, the better podcast SEO works because you're focused on a specific keyword you're trying to rank for. And the more guest appearances you go on will increase the rate in which you grow, because you're essentially being discovered by new listeners on someone else's podcast. They then go to your podcast, and because your podcast is super focused on your content and the keyword you're ranking for, they're going to binge your entire content because it's made for them and it feels relevant, right? And that's what leads to faster growth and higher engagement. Look, there's a lot here, so I'll literally take some time, dissect this. I know it can feel overwhelming. It can feel very confusing to begin with, but honestly, if you just follow these principles, it will help you a metric ton. Let's just follow this. If you have to rewatch this, that's completely fine. So again, my name is Anthony Maneri. You have been absolutely fantastic. If you want to learn more about how we help podcasters like yourself grow quickly, I've got a first link down below. It is a VSL. It's a complete pitch. I will be pitching you to look at a story call. You know how this goes. You know how this works, right? But the point is, if it resonates, amazing, book a call and our team can help you out. And if not, feel free to use this YouTube channel or our podcast while your podcast isn't growing as a free resource to help you along the way. If you're not ready for that, if you don't really care too much, that's totally cool as well. Again, you've been absolutely fantastic, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.